Welcome back to my series on DML. I'm going to continue from where we left off. However, I've made a few minor changes to the data, just adding a little bit more data to kind of expand the number of examples I can provide. So I have another account refresh script, which if you're in Blackboard, you'll have available in the content area where you can get the refresh scripts. So your refresh file will look something like this, and so it looks probably very similar to you to what you saw before. So everything here is the same. We've got our drop table and create table if it already exists. So if you've already got the table, then you can do that. Now, if you're following along at home, you may need to create a database for this. If you didn't start in the previous series. So just remember, all you have to do is right click on this databases folder, go to new database, and type in the name of the database that you want to create. So I typed in my social.college because that was a crappy domain name I could pick up, and then we'll click OK. Now I've already got it, so I'm not going to click OK, but you would. I'll click cancel, and then you'll have a database here in your databases folder just like I did. And then you're going to want to just run this script after you download it. So it's a refresh script. You'll find it on Blackboard. Now instead of the original 20 records that I had, I've added another 10, so now we're up to 30 records, and these 30 records have a few properties that will allow us to demonstrate some things. You don't have to worry about exactly what's happening inside this script. You'll be able to review it properly afterwards. So just put your cursor somewhere in a blank area, make sure nothing's highlighted, click execute. It'll say one row is affected several times. If you take the time to count, that's 30 times, but you don't need to. And then we can close this. As long as you don't have any red errors in here, then you should be okay. And then you'll also have this kind of starter file to download to follow along if you so choose. And we're going to go over a couple of points. Now, I just want to have a look at the files or the table that you'll see here. I also have a post table. I did not give you the install script for the post table. Don't worry, we're going to get to that eventually. For today, you're only concerned with the account table. If you don't see it already, you'll have to refresh your tables folder. So you right click refresh, and then in your tables folder you'll be able to see this account table. You probably will not see a post table. I don't think I gave you that install at all yet. Then you can unfold it and you can have a look at what the columns look like. So you can see what each of the column names are. This covers all of them: ID, first name, last name, email, etc. And then in brackets beside them you have a data type, whether or not they're allowed to be null. And then this PK just means that we have a primary key. You also see a yellow key symbol on there. And we talked about what primary keys are, so I'm not going to go into detail on that right now. If you want to have a kind of a little bit more of a clean tabular look at what these are, you can also right click on account and go to design. And that will give you a clearer idea of how we've designed it. It looks much like our table designs that we do ourselves, except that I can't move that. Except that now we've also got this allow nulls here, and we don't have a constraints column. But otherwise, you have column name and data type that are very similar to what you would have put in a table design. Now, what you might also want to do is just have a glance at everything in that account table. Now you can right click and go to select top 1000 rows, then it does all this funny stuff here for you, and you look at that. However, really all you need is this select star from account and you get the same result. Right? So anytime you're starting to work with a table or multiple tables, it's probably a good idea to do a select star from each of those tables and just have a quick look at the data. Now we're done over here on the left hand side in the Object Explorer, and I want a little more screen real estate, so I'm going to click this auto hide button. And now I've got all that extra space, and we can have a look at our data. So one thing you'll see, first off you'll see none of the data at the top has changed. However, I've added an account budget for each student. This is just a randomized number. We're going to assume that the students are sharing their budget with the social platform for some reason. You know, this is their budget for school, maybe over the next couple of years or something. And we're going to use this just to do a couple of calculations. We still have our account active column. We still have our study year and school column. And we're going to use those a little bit too. You'll also notice that sometimes I've got a null value, and it's kind of hard to see because the color is just a little bit off, but there's a yellow background on these null values. And that's kind of necessary visually for us because the word null is not physically inside that table. That's just an indicator to us as the programmer that that kind of data is in there. If you scroll down some of the new records, you'll notice that the year was not filled in. That's going to help us with one of our examples. The study was not filled in for some of them, but not for all of them. Same thing with the school. So there's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and that's just going to be used for examples. But when you see null, those are not physical values that are in there. They're an indication to us that there's absolutely no value in there. And the yellow background further confirms that, because hypothetically, you could have the text with the letters NULL in there, in which case you would have a white background. But we don't, and if you ever wrote the word NULL into a field, there would have to be a pretty darn good reason for it. So it's very unlikely you'll ever see that happen. Okay, so let's move on. Let's start doing some of these things.